Chapter 11. It had been a very busy morning, but everything was almost ready, and the backyard looked perfect. The tables were covered with brightly patterned tablecloths and jars full of eye-popping displays of wildflowers. The tree branches were twinkling with fairy lights, and paper lanterns hung between the trees. A colorful banner with a letter on each triangular flag spelled out, "Happy Birthday, Jane." A fun photo booth was set up in a corner with a polka-dotted backdrop and silly paper props, like hats and fake eyeglasses. Jane's mother was heating up the grill, and her father was practicing playing DJ, and he was actually pretty good. Jane bustled about, setting up the make-your-own tie-dyed t-shirt table. She looked up at Sage. "Hey! The guests are going to be here in 15 minutes. Go get dressed." Sage looked down at her dusty t-shirt. "Good idea," she said with a laugh. She headed upstairs, glancing down at her stars app. 75 starmines to go on the countdown clock. Talk about cutting things close. Sage took a last look around Jane's bedroom as she packed up her backpack. These wishling artifacts, her notebook and pencils from school, her math book, and the paperback that Jane had given her, would be of real interest to her Wishers 101 teacher, Professor Alara Ursa. Sage put on her tie-dyed shirt. She used her outfit changer to select a pretty lavender skirt, turquoise leggings, and lavender flats with big flowers on them. Just as she finished brushing and braiding her hair, the doorbell rang. She bounded downstairs and opened the door with a smile. "Welcome to Jane's..." She blinked in surprise. "OMS! What are you doing here?" In front of her was a familiar face, Tessa. Sage blinked at her in surprise. What? But you're sparkly, and your hair is still green," Sage managed to get out. Tessa was as shimmery and vibrant as she was at home. Tessa grinned. "You look sparkly too," she told Sage. "I think we can see each other as we actually are." "Aren't you going to invite me in?" asked Tessa. "Why are you here?" Sage said huffily. "Everything's fine. The party is about to start. I'm just going to collect my wish energy and come back home." Tessa smiled. "Sage, relax. I'm sure it's no big deal, but Lady Stella thinks that something might be a little off with your mission. Your wish energy levels were getting low, so she sent me down to check things out," she said. "Your vital signs were worrying her. It was pretty clear that your strength levels were falling, and that is the classic sign of a mission gone wrong." Sage shook her head. "So I'm a little tired. So what? Look, as soon as the first guest arrives, the wish will come true. The countdown clock will stop. You'll see." Just then, Jane came in. "Hey, Sage, tell me if I'm just being crazy." Her voice trailed off. "Hello," she said. "Sage, I didn't know you invited a friend." "Yes," Sage said quickly. "I hope that's okay. This is my friend Tessa." "No, that's awesome," said Jane. "Pleased to meet you, Tessa. The more the merrier. Make yourself at home. We have tons of food and extra t-shirts you can make." She pulled Sage aside. "I'm just freaking out a little," she said softly. She pointed at her t-shirt. "I wish the shirts were fancier. Doesn't it feel like something is missing?" "Oh, don't be silly," said Sage. "They're perfect just the way they are." "I guess you're right," Jane said with a sigh. "I just wish they were a little cooler looking." The doorbell rang. "The guests are here!" Jane squealed. She ran to the front door to let them in. Sage held up her stars app. "Now watch," she said. "The clock is going to stop. Her wish has been granted. The guests are here." Tessa shook her head. "Something's wrong," she said. "Just wait," said Sage. "Ella! Madison!" cried Jane. The two girls looked like special party editions of themselves. Madison wore a headband with a huge flower on it, and Ella had on a pair of glittery shoes. They hugged Jane hello and handed her their gifts. They waved to Sage as Jane ushered them through the house and into the backyard. Sage gulped as the numbers kept ticking by. She could not believe her eyes. The wish had been fulfilled. There were people at Jane's party. But the countdown clock had not stopped. Tessa shook her head. "See? Something is wrong. But there's still time to fix it. We just have to figure out what happened." Sage sat down and buried her head in her hands. What was going on? She had done everything right. "I don't get it," she said. "My necklace lit up when I met Jane." "Do you think that she had another wish?" Tessa asked. "No," replied Sage. "She told me this was her heart's desire." Tessa wrinkled her brow. "Maybe your wish pendant malfunctioned?" Sage took a deep breath. Her mind began to race. The pendant had glowed when she met Jane, hadn't it? She replayed the scene in her mind. She met Jane, stepped back to look at the glowing pendant, and bumped into Genevieve. Oh, starf. Genevieve. The girl whom she had sprayed with an entire container of chocolate milk, the girl who totally disliked her, the one girl who was not invited to the party, was her wisher. Sage stood up and walked to the door. "Where are you going?" Tessa asked. Sage shook her head. "There's not enough time to explain, but I think I know how to fix this. I'll be right back." She raced outside to find Jane, who was grinning. Her cheeks flushed pink with excitement and happiness. Sage ran to the front gate, throwing it open and nearly knocking over one of Jane's guests in the process. She had wasted all her wish energy on the wrong wish. She couldn't even rely on her secret talent to help make this wish come true. She was all on her own. And she literally didn't have a starman. Make that a second to lose.